If you know my guy right here, let him know I left my insoles in my shoes. If he can get them back to me, I'll give him something else. Hashtag on me.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_Beeble and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today we are looking back at the 5 games from Sunday, previewing 11 games for Monday and looking at all the injury news right across the NBA. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Now, I have mentioned it on a couple of the mini-shows we've had so far this week, just in terms of the schedule for this week of Christmas coming up. It's going to be pretty much the usual schedule. There just won't be a preview of the Christmas Day games, because the preview would normally occur on what is my Christmas Day here, so I am going to be having Christmas Day off, spend that with my family. So that's all you will That's all you won't get this week is the preview of the Christmas Day games. All of your standard recaps will be here, or the mini shows will be here. You just won't get that preview day for Christmas Day games. But let's talk about the games that did actually take place on Sunday and get to the first one of those, which is the Dallas Mavericks falling to the Toronto Raptors. Now, the Mavericks were up absolutely huge, 30 points at halftime, and the Raptors came storming home to win 110-107 in the end. A fantastic victory. On the Mavericks side, the burner, Jalen Brunson, great again. 21, 4 and 9, and for as long as Luka Doncic is out, which literally may not be any more games at all, Brunson's a must-roster player. When Donk is back, it's really hard to see Brunson being a value in even a 14-team league format. That is the problem. The same thing goes with Porzingis. Well, actually, not the same thing. He, of course, is still going to be a must-roster player, but his value is going to fall off. He's getting double-doubles every game, the usage is up, and even though the percentage was down here, the numbers are still elevated with Doncic out. Now, if you can execute any sort of a sell high on Porzingis, I would try it. It's going to be pretty impossible to do, though. Timmy Hardaway had a really nice line across the board, 16, 8, and 5 with 2 steals and 2 threes. I think realistically we should just be expecting points and threes, and these other things are a nice bonus, more of a 12-teamer. While Seth Curry, he's been on fire, and then he puts up this absolute nonsense. 1 point on 7 shots, just an absolute disaster from him. While Delon Wright's minutes pushed back down, 1 steal and 2 assists. Now, he's been right up there in the rankings because he's been averaging over 3 steals a game. That obviously didn't happen here. Doncic returning doesn't seem like it's going to actually impact him that much because he's still not getting big minutes, and he really is a specialist, while Dwight Powell was fantastic, 17 and 9 with 2 triples. I talked about him on the Waiver Wire show as a 14-team league ad, and I think he's still around that area, but he's absolutely someone to watch in a 12-team format. Interestingly, Ryan Broekhoff has taken the spot of Justin Jackson in the rotation. He got 18 minutes for 6 points. For the Raptors now, there's so many questions and so much that people want to know about this. Let's start with the basics. Kyle Lowry was great. 42 minutes, 32, 8 and 10, fantastic. People look at the box score, and I guess we all don't have time to watch everything and read everything, and that's part of what this show's about. But they look at it and go, holy shit, the water boy, Chris Boucher, 21 and 7, 24 minutes, 2 steals, 4 blocks, 12 free throw attempts. Josh has always said he's a per-minute monster. I know he's a per-minute monster. Bang, he is an auto-ad player. Now, if I had the Lee Corso Not So Fast, my friend drop, I'd play it here. Because he played 24 minutes because Serge Ibaka played 24 minutes. Because they were down as much as they were, that 30-point deficit, Nick Nurse ran with his bench. Last game, Ibaka played 36 minutes and we had 12 minutes out of Boucher. That is the problem here. If they are not going to commit to playing him at power forward, which they haven't done in either of these 2 games with the absence of Siakam and Gasol, then his minutes are literally just going to come behind Ibaka. And I don't think we should be counting on Serge playing 24 minutes a night. I think he's going to be at 32, 33 minutes a night, leaving 15 minutes for Boucher. Now, they could work him into some of those power forward minutes. It's a possibility, and we know he can produce on a per-minute basis. But this is not the indication that that is happening. This is a weird circumstance of the team just getting absolutely throttled and Nurse going, oh, well, let's see what this bench can do. Holy shit, they're doing well. Let's keep them in and let them fight back and get back into the game. And that's exactly what happened in this one. That's why you also see 29 minutes from Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, who had 18 and 9. A big game from him as well. They can still be... Look, you want to take a flyer on Boucher and think that this sort of performance translates into, well, now Nurse is going to have to play him 25 a night because of how good he was there. By all means, I don't believe it's going to be the case. Maybe he ekes out another 2 minutes or so. But until he can play 7-8 minutes alongside Serge Ibaka, then it's just not going to be a viable option, in my opinion. And again, this doesn't change that thought process because we literally did not see him play alongside Serge Ibaka. Pat McCaw did what he does. He is a steals type specialist, 2 threes, 4 steals. That is what he does, and that is why he can have value. We know that steals can be something that does really increase players' value. While the Jedi, OG Anunoby.
Hello there.
Hello there indeed. 6 points in his 29 minutes. He is a hold, as is, of course, Fred VanVleet, who shot 15%. 10 points in his 28 minutes. Another one of those guys who probably played 10 fewer minutes than he would have if the team hadn't been 30 points down when he was in the games. They really struggled. He was a minus 20, Anunoby a minus 27, McCaw a minus 25, and Ibaka minus 21. Now, you could make the argument, and I think it's fair enough, to say that, hey, maybe they should start Hollis-Jefferson and play Anunoby back at the 3 because McCaw's not that good, and that's a real possibility. But again, in regards to Boucher, unless we start seeing him play next to Ibaka, take a flyer, grab him. Let's see what happens, but this is not the indicator that the value was right there. Something needs to change in those rotations, and this is not to say that it won't change, because it very well could change, but it hasn't yet. So again, it's not about trying to look at the future. It's about saying what happened here. Why is his production and his minutes like this? This is the reason and nothing else. Doesn't mean it doesn't change next game, though. We know he's a per-minute guy, a big per-minute guy. But it doesn't mean that it's going to change as we move forward. Let's move on to the next game. The Charlotte Hornets, they got smacked by the Boston Celtics. It was 119-93. Devontae Graham, the shit field goal percentage persists, but 23, 4 and 10 with 6 triples. Huge usage, good production. You just got to write off that field goal percentage category. And what about Miles Bridges? Now, this is the line that I thought we could see on average from Bridges this season. 15, 6 and 3, 2 threes, a steal, a block, 46% from the field. I thought maybe this could be what he does regularly. Now, the minutes also push back up to 32, which is super encouraging, but it's been really, really rough going for Bridges. So if you want to take an upside flyer on a guy, maybe you look at it. But again, this is that one game where we go, okay, this is what happens, but it just hasn't happened so many times. Biyombo had 18 points in his 27 minutes with 2 blocks, outplayed Cody Zeller, who played only 17 minutes, and those guys playing not next to each other anymore because Nick Batum's at power forward. Now, Batum was pretty bad, 6 points in his 22 minutes, and Rozier 14, 2 and 4 on 17 field goal attempts. Revenge game there for Terry Rozier. Cody Martin got his 21 minutes. Monk got his 20 minutes as well, while Marvin Williams playing time right down under 19 minutes in this one, as that Hornets team really struggled. For the Celtics, big game from Jayson Tatum. 39 and 12, 4 triples, 1 steal, 3 blocks. If he can bring that field goal percentage up, which has been lagging for most of the season, consistently bring us defensive numbers, that's how he pushes into the top 20, top 15 on a consistent basis. Maybe even top 10 in a couple of years. But he needs to be able to bring all those things together to do it. This is a great illustration of the fact that he can do it. Kemba Walker bounced back after last game, 23 points with 4 assists and 5 threes, while Jaylen Brown had a trip to the locker room early but ended with 16, 9 and 5 in 32 minutes. When Brown went to the locker room, Romeo Langford stepped up and actually played pretty well on the court. 8 points, 4 rebounds, 23 minutes. Really good defense. There's not enough minutes for him to be a fantasy impact guy as we move forward. Of course, there was no Hayward or Smart in this one, but it's just encouraging to see him play like that. While Daniel Tice got into foul trouble, hence only 15 minutes, Enes Kanter then picked up the slack and played 24. Kanter's a really strong rebounding stream guy, 13 boards with a block in his 24 minutes. Grant Williams also starting to play really, really well. A guy that you know that I liked coming into the season, in the draft especially, struggled to begin the season, but he's hitting threes now, 111 in this one, 12 points in 22 minutes. How the minutes roll when Hayward returns is a big question mark, but he's absolutely a name to watch for dynasty formats and for deeper leagues, and played pretty well in this game overall, and has for the last week or so. The next game up, we look at the Indiana Pacers. They got spanked by the Bucks, 117-89. Domantas Sabonis, a really strong line, 19 and 18, 5 assists, and a Richie Beno.
2 for 2.
That's 2 steals, 2 blocks, and 2 triples. Big game from him. Miles Turner, pretty yuck here. 22 minutes for Turner. Now, the encouraging thing is the shooting is okay, 50%, but 11 and 5 in 22 minutes with 2 threes, a steal, and a block. His value is just always going to come down to the blocks, and then if he can add on to it by shooting well and getting a couple of threes, that's where the value comes in. But that's pretty rough from Turner overall. Aaron Holiday, spot start for Jez-Lam. 11 points, 2 steals, 3 assists. He's a solid stream option. He was playing more minutes than Lamb even before the injury. Solid enough option in the short term. While Dougie McDirt, 26 minutes, 15 points. Not much else, but again, playing a lot better this season than in the past. Brogdon had 10 and 10 on 26% shooting in his hashtag revenge game, while Tony Warren Jr., just the shot wasn't there. 31% for 9 points. Always my worry with him that if the shot doesn't go in, and it usually does, then he's really lax in those other areas. I worry about his usage moving forward. He is not a drop at this point. I think he can become one, but this is not a good game. He will be better than this, though. I don't think there's too much debate about that. On to the Bucks. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 18, 19, and 9. 2 steals, 2 blocks, ridiculously good. While Wes Matthews had 19 with 4 triples in 28 minutes. A bit of a throwback Matthews game there. Nothing to get overly excited about. But George Hill, we have to talk about how well this guy's playing. Just doesn't miss anymore, apparently. 17 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 60% shooting. A great short-term ad while Bledsoe is out. 14-team must roster, and probably a 12-teamer as well. While the big ragu, Dante DiVincenzo, only had 4 points, but 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks keeps him as a 12-team league guy. For all those of you who had Brook Lopez on your waiver wire, this is why you don't. 17 and 8, 3 threes and 2 blocks. His last 3 or 4 games have been fantastic. The shot was always going to come back to some degree, and it's starting to trend that way now, so good stuff from him. While not much else really happening with this Bucks bench. Some strong performances, though, from DiVincenzo, Hill, and Lopez to go along with Matthews and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Let's go on to the next game. We had a close one here as the Thunder get the win over the Clippers, 118-112 in the end. Now, the Clippers had a pretty decent lead in this one, and the Thunder, another comeback. They are really rolling at the moment, locked into a playoff spot for the time being. That may not last, but they are looking really good. Now, the Clippers were without Kawhi Leonard, so their rotations and their production all gets a little bit screwy in situations like that. Landry Shamet had 14 and 4 in his 31 minutes, added 3 assists, added 2 steals. That's all well and good, and got to the line 7 times. There's just so much there that doesn't feel realistic when Kawhi returns. They were also without Patrick Beverley, so Lou Williams started at point guard. He had 22 and 7 on 35% shooting with a sky-high usage, and Patrick Patterson's the man who started for Leonard, 12 and 6 in his 18 minutes. Harrell was all right, 18 and 8, but the percentages weren't there, and that dropped a lot of his value back down. Paul George, not at his greatest either. 18 points on 17 shots with 3 assists and 2 steals. Overall, a little bit lackluster for the Clippers overall in this one. For the Thunder, Gilgeous-Alexander, he had his revenge game, 32, 3 and 5 with 2 steals. The good thing about it now, he was really struggling with the efficiency, and we thought that would be able to pick back up, but he's adding assists, 5 assists here. The steals are starting to come back. I think he's going to have a really explosive February onwards. Really, really strong to see it start to pick up again now, though. Well, Dennis Schroeder, I don't know what the hell's going on with this guy, but he is unbelievable. 28, 5 and 6, 4 threes, 33 minutes. You just feel with how well he's playing, the drop-off is going to be super hard. It's going to be super steep, but for now, he's a must-roster player, and I don't really understand how he's doing it. A big game from Steve Adams as well, 20 and 17 with 3 steals. His early season foibles seem to have been solved to a degree. While there was a really late scratch in this one, the Italian cock, Danilo Gallinari,
Hands off my cock!
he had ankle soreness in the pre-game warm-ups and pulled out.
Giggity!
So Darius Bazley got a late start, 7 and 8 for Bazley with 2 steals. Bazley is a strong watch list guy, especially if Gallinari gets hurt or gets traded. He's okay. He's not going to really be knocking the door down to the top 70 or anything, but for those deeper formats, there is something to see there. 12, 7 and 6 for Chrissy Paul. Well, Terrence Ferguson shouted out Tony Snell in only the way he knows. 0 points on 0 of 4 shooting with 3 rebounds in his 29 minutes. And then on to the last game of the night, a huge blowout. The Nuggets get the victory 128-104 over the Lakers. Big Chungus Nikola Jokic, 18, 6 and 5 with a triple one. He's really playing much better throughout December, while Gary Harris, Big Gaza.
Nice, Gary!
Nice indeed. I talked about him on the waiver wire show earlier today saying his steals were up and that was giving him some value. Well, 4 steals here. He also added 19 points. He had 5 assists. He's not a must-add 12-team league guy, but the minutes have been consistently high all season. And if he starts to bring it like this, then yes, he can be a 12-team league add. Farton Will-Barton had 14, 13, and 5. While Paul Millsap, what a ridiculous line this is. Only 21 minutes, but 21 points with 1 rebound. And nothing else. No assists, no steals, no blocks. He did hit 3 threes. He had a 30% usage on a true shooting of 71%. So there are a few things there that just aren't going to continue to happen. If he plays 21 minutes a night, he won't be a 12-team league guy. Now, he'll likely play 24 to 25. He's really on the fringes to me, but this is an unrealistic expectation for Millsap. Malik Beasley also had a big game, 16 points in 22 minutes, about the first time he's really done that all season. I think he's a really low upside player who scores, he can do it efficiently, but does very little else. So I think he's one of those guys that if he does get traded and becomes a starter somewhere else, that people will give up quite a bit to get him, and he won't end up meeting those expectations because he just doesn't provide value in those other areas. But this is a good game from him. While the Blue Arrows struggled, 6 points, 5 assists, 27% shooting for Jamal Murray. For the Lakers, lots of concerns here. No LeBron James, of course.
LeBron James.
He had that thoracic strain issue. Anthony Davis, I don't understand what the Lakers were doing here. Davis, I already questioned what they were doing with his ankle sprain last week, and then he hurt his knee in this one. They were down 20, and he was still playing in the fourth quarter. 34 minutes, 32 and 11 with 4 blocks, and I've posited before, I am sure so much of this is Davis just trying to prove that he's a tough guy, and I think it's going to be a real problem at some point. The knee issue is the same side as his ankle, which again, destabilization. They are all worries that I continually have, and I'm not sure that we're going to see Davis and LeBron or LeBron play over on Christmas Day. There are real concerns here. With LeBron out, Rajon Rondo started. He's on fire to begin the game. Had 3 steals in about 5 minutes. Ended with 3 steals. 5 points in 28 minutes. 4 rebounds and 8 assists. Poor shooting percentages. He does have fantasy value because they're playing him too many minutes. He's getting assists and he's getting some steals, and that has value. But realistically, he is not a good on-court player, and he is detrimental to team success. I don't think Frank Vogel's going to necessarily work that out this season, but once he does, Rondo's value in fantasy disappears. They also made another change. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was benched for Avery Bradley. I've got no idea what the reasoning behind that decision was. Bradley hasn't been good. KCP hasn't been good, but I think he's been better. But making that dual change with LeBron out was a curious one. 6 points for KCP. Bradley had 6 points as well in 21 minutes, 25 minutes for Caldwell-Pope. Neither of them are really touching the sides of 12 or even 14-team leagues, but it was a curious decision. While the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma, returned, took a lot of shots, 15 of them in fact, had 16 points, played 22 minutes, actually blocked 2 shots. High usage in this game because of no LeBron. I wouldn't get sucked in and look at, he's on a restriction, he's going to put up much better numbers now. There's a lot of factors that go into this, and I don't think he is a 12-team league guy. JaVale and Dwight Howard, I think you don't need me to tell you that they aren't even close to 12-team league guys at this point, and it would take an Anthony Davis long-term injury for them to become those players. Let's have a look now at some injury news across the NBA. Matisse Thybulle's going to be out for a couple of weeks with a knee injury. There's no 12-team pickup in that scenario. It'll be Hale Neto, Trey Burke, Furkan Korkmaz, Prison Mike Scott that all sort of absorb those minutes, so no one really gets a boost there. Deep leagues, you look at Trey Burke as that ad who's been out of the rotation but could jump back in now. Davis Bertans is going to miss Monday with a quad injury. Not a droppable player. I've had multiple people asking that question. Is Bertans droppable? No. His teammate, Flaming Mo Wagner, he's out for the next week with his ankle sprain. I still think that when he comes back, he's going to be a 12-team league guy, but if you can't deal with not having someone in that active roster spot this week, then drop him. But he does have a window of value for when Bryant is out, but taking 1 week plus out of it is not ideal. Gordon Hayward's still missing with that foot injury. Maybe he returns on Christmas, while Marcus Smart doesn't look like he's going to play on Christmas with his eye infection. That's been a really, really long-term situation with Smart. Must be pretty bad. While Karl Anthony Towns is dealing with that knee issue that's caused him to miss a couple of games. He's questionable again for Monday as well. And I talk about injuries all the time and saying just because someone plays 82 games every season doesn't mean they play 82 games moving forward. That's not to say that you don't draft someone because they're going to get hurt. It's just to say that none of that stuff is really predictive of what's going to happen in the future, because weird shit can happen literally at any point. And now Towns has hurt his knee, and let's see how many games he ends up missing. Hopefully it's not too many. With him out, Gorgie Jeng is the guy that we add in the short term with his injury. And then we've got LeBron, who missed today's game. Hopefully it's not too long for LeBron, but I would imagine that he's going to be doubtful for Christmas. We don't know that at this point, which is obviously going to be a bummer for that matchup against the Clippers. And then lastly, Isaiah Thomas was suspended 2 games by the NBA for going into the crowd against the Sixers after those idiots in the crowd abused him. I understand the suspension. The NBA doesn't want players going into the stands. It's fair enough that those blokes got suspended from NBA games for 12 months. They shouldn't be doing that sort of stuff. But Thomas can feel slightly aggrieved, but he's just got to know you just don't go into the stands under any circumstances. Let's move on and talk some DFS now. A big 11-game slate coming up. We're looking at FanDuel pricing over here for Monday's action. All right, let's go to the first game for Monday. 11 games. We're looking at FanDuel pricing here. It is the Toronto Raptors and the Indiana Pacers. Both of these teams on a back-to-back. The Pacers are 6-point favorites, and the total is 209.5. Jeremy Lamb missed Sunday's game, so his status is in doubt here for the Pacers. If he is out, Aaron Holiday is the guy that gets the nod. While as for Toronto, Pascal Siakam, Marc Gasol, Norm Powell, all those guys still remain sidelined. If we look at the point guards in this one, Brogdon is at 7,200. A little bit underwhelming recently, averaging under 28 points in his last 3, but you think he can get at least marginally back on track here. I think he's worth a look in a matchup, which should be okay, while Aaron Holiday at 42, I actually like that quite a bit for Holiday, especially if Lamb is sidelined. As for Lowry, 8,400, really, really strong play. He's killing it, absorbing usage as he needs to with all those other players out, so he looks like he's a good option at that sort of a salary. Van Vliet's at 7,500. Hasn't been himself since coming back from the knee bruise. 7,500 is not a huge price for Fred. I think he's at least a tournament guy at the very worst. Lamb, no thanks. Davis, no thank you either. Well, Pat McCaw at 4,000. He played 26 minutes today. It wasn't his best game, but had 24 points in that time. I don't really rate him as a great DFS play. The Jedi, OG Anunoby's at 56.
Hello there.
I think he's more of a tournament guy. Justin Holiday, no thanks. Doug McDermott also I'm out on. While Tony Warren Jr. is at 4,800. I think that Warren at that sort of a salary is fine. He was pretty poor on Sunday, but he can bounce back from that. At power forward, Barker at 7,900. Really, really bad. In Sunday's game, only had the 16 points. At 7,900 in a positive matchup, I feel good about getting back on him, especially when I consider that most people will end up fading him because of that performance on Sunday. So that's obviously good news in that situation. For the Pacers, Domantas Sabonis, is dealing with a hip issue, but he expects to be ready to go. He did play on Sunday, of course, but he expects to be all right and ready to go. He's at 8,100. He's been a little bit under that mark as well, but I don't mind using him here. Hollis-Jefferson at 4,000 is worth a play in both tournaments and cash. And then you got the Waterboy Chris Boucher at 3,900. He just dropped a casual 46 in that game against the Mavericks, but as I detailed earlier in the show, a lot of factors had to occur for that to happen. But at 3,900, there's really not many other better high upside type players around. At center, Turner's at 5,600. He'd been playing okay, around that 30, 35 point mark, which is great at that salary. There's always a dud potential there with Miles. I think he's worth a look. Probably more tournament than anything else, though. The next game to take a look at, the Chicago Bulls and the Orlando Magic. The Magic are 4.5 point favorites here. Both Zach LaVine and Wendell Carter Jr. are on their injury report. They are probable, as is the Bulls' recent strategy. Markelle Fultz is at 5,100. The Bulls have been really, really good at limiting opposition point guard production. Fultz has been okay, but probably not worth a $5,100 mark. While Chris Dunn's at 54, and he, as the starting small forward, has been giving us some high 20s, which is okay at 54. I worry a little bit about his upside. While DJ Augustin at 43 has been nuclear of late. I wouldn't feel super confident about him. While Satoransky, I love the fact that they're giving him more minutes. He's giving us 30 plus a night and a 5,500. Why not? For your shooting guards, you've got Terry Ross, no thank you. Evan Fournier at 55. Now that salary's come down enough for Fournier where you can at least consider him an option, but he really has struggled since Vucevic has been back in the lineup. While LaVine at 8,000, he seems to be getting 40 plus every single night, so that makes him a relatively strong option. At small forward, Johnny Isaac is down at 5,900. I like that, especially like it for tournaments, but I think there's some cash value in it. While Denzel the Hammer Valentine, he's seen his minutes drop down in each of the last 2 games, so he's probably not one to look at. Aaron Gordon is at 6,100. Power forwards tend to have some pretty good times against the Bulls. That price is low enough to at least be marginally interested in for Gordon, but realistically only for a tournament. While Markkanen at 6,000, I like that probably more than Gordo, who has been playing pretty well at the moment. Markkanen averaging almost 35 a game over his last 5. For your centers, Vucevic's at 7,700. Absolutely love that one from Vucevic. A huge positive matchup for him going up against the Bulls. He dropped 63 last game, so yeah, I feel good about him getting 40 plus in this one. While Wendell Carter is at 63, I think that is overpriced for Carter. The next game up that we take a look at, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Detroit Pistons. Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose both missed last game, while Luke Kennard has also appeared on the injury report as being questionable. So obviously some situations there that need to be dealt with in terms of where that value goes. When you have Griffin out, usage has to go to other places, but the two normal biggest beneficiaries are Kennard and Rose, so it depends on whether they play or not. Otherwise, you're looking at boosts for guys like Markieff Morris in Griffin's absence. Andre Drummond gets a boost there. Do you get someone like the Shark, Bruce Brown, get an opportunity? Svi Mikhailiuk has started in the past. There's a few options there who could step it up. Timmy Frazier last game with Rose out put up some numbers, so there's quite a lot to pay attention to in terms of the injury status of these Pistons players. At point guard, Simmons is at 7,900, and for all the criticisms that he gets, he still puts up DFS numbers. He's averaging 43 over the last 5. I don't really see the Pistons shutting him down. At that sort of salary, he should be a 40-plus guy, and I feel okay about that. Rose is at 55. I really like that if he plays and Griffin is out. That looks like a strong price for him. Trey Burke and Hal Neto, no thanks. At shooting guard, Joshie Richardson's at 56. Not the greatest DFS player. I think we can find better ones, while Bruce Brown's at 43. A tournament guy if two of those three aforementioned questionable players are out. The Sixers are going to be without Matisse Thybulle, so there's some more minutes to go around for guys like Furkan Korkmaz, but I'm not really interested in him. McKay looks at minimum salary, but also not an interesting guy, while Langston Galloway at 4,000. He is the...
sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
He's the placeholder for that, so he's always worth a GPP look, especially if a minutes opportunity opens up. At small forward, Toby Harris is at 6,800, a real stinker a couple of games ago, but bounced back nicely. You feel okay about his cash floor value, while the Ducks at 49, Luke Kennard. If Griffin's out, I'm all about Kennard at that sort of a salary. Mark Heap is at 53, and he will also, I think, smash value if Griffin is out. For your power forwards, Horford is at 63. No, thank you. Griffin at 59. A terrible defensive matchup. Not the one that I'm really looking forward to here for Griffo. And then for your centers, Drummond's at 9,400 and Embiid is at 97. If I'm going to take one of those guys, it's going to be Embiid. Head-to-head, it's 58 versus 44 over their last 3 matchups with each other. So at a $300 price difference only, I will go with Embiid, who is, of course, the better player and a guy who has produced the best in those matchups over the recent times. Let's move on now. Our next game is the Atlanta Hawks. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Baptist, Johnny Collins, is back. He will be starting. As for that rest of that lineup, we just don't know at this point. Will we see Bruno Fernando go to the bench? Will it be Cam Reddish that goes to the bench? They are probably the two only realistic options there for Atlanta. Larry Nance is questionable for Cleveland, while Evan Turner is questionable for Atlanta. At point guard, the Padawan, Colin Sexton, 5,600. He had a shit game last time and still had 21 in 25 minutes. So I really, really like his cash value in what is a pretty strong matchup against Trae Young. Darius Garland's hard to get excited about, while Young is all the way up at 10,300. Now, guards, we normally really like guards going up against Cleveland. Young has struggled a little bit against Cleveland in his career, 41 average over the last three games, and that's in 34 minutes, but it's really hard to think that he's not going to be at least nudging 50, which at 10-3 is pretty strong. For your shooting guards, Clarko's at 46. He had an absolute monster last game, dropped 44. I think the likelihood of that happening again is pretty slim. I would much rather take the 54 on Kevin Vanderpants Herter, who has averaged quietly 30 points over his last 3. Bembry and Crab, no thanks. At small forward, Kevin Porter's at 4,000. Now, I like Porter's upside here. The matchup's great, but if Nance is out as well, he could fill in some power forward minutes, or Osman play some power forward minutes, so an opportunity could arise there for him. Reddish is at 43. We can do better than that. Chetty Osman is not one of the options of doing better. While DeAndre Hunter is at 4,900. I don't mind it for cash. I don't really think there's huge upside with him, but I don't think that it's a bad cash play to look at DeAndre Hunter there. At power forward, Nance is at 4,000. No, thank you. Kevin Love's at 6,500. A real opportunity for him, even in limited minutes, to put up big numbers. So he's an interesting guy, more of a tournament guy, though, than anything. While the Baptist himself, 7,700 for Johnny Collins. It is a little bit hard to use him first time out at that sort of a price. It's not disastrous, but I probably would just be a little bit cautious. Jabari's a strong fade, of course. John Henson and Bruno Fernando, no value in them. Tristan Thompson's at 6,400, really good cash value, limited tournament appeal. Like, he's been a 30, 32-point guy most nights. Good matchup, but is he going to be a 50-pointer, a 45-pointer? I think that's a little bit hard to see. Well, Alex Len also been pretty dominant. He dropped 46 last game, Len, but again, the uncertainty with how the rotation goes, is it going to be majority of Collins at center or at power forward? We don't know, and that's going to put a bit of a question mark over Alex Len's value in this game. The next game we take a look at here is the New York Knicks. They are hosting the Washington Wizards. The Knicks are 3-point favorites at a total of 232. The Wizards have everybody out pretty much. Isaiah Thomas has been suspended. Davis Bertans is out. Flaming Mo Wagner is out. Thomas the Tank Bryant is out. Just CJ Miles is out. Pretty much everybody you could think of is out. And we're going to get big minutes from Onjes Pasechniks and Gary Payton. That is the situation here. And a bloke called Garrison Matthews. So there is a ton of value that's opened up here. Ish Smith, number one, 4,500. Smash the shit out of it. An absolute lock cash play. Even though he had 3 points last game, he should be able to beat that value as the starting point guard. Lord Alfred Payton is also the Knicks' new starting point guard. He's at 5,200 and he had 37 last game. An absolute cash lock to me as well. Dennis Smith and Frank Ntilikina, hard to use those guys. At shooting guard, Bradley Braddles Beal, 9,400. If he doesn't drop 50, I'll be pretty surprised in this matchup. So I do like Bealo quite a bit, while Rowan Barrett Jr. is at 5,500. Even when he has a good game, it doesn't seem to translate to great DFS numbers, just 29 in the last one, but the matchup's great. The Wizards give up points to everybody. So I think at 55, Barrett absolutely has to be at least on your list of names that you're considering. At small forward, Troy Brown Jr. is at 4,800. I think he's more of a cash play than a tournament upside guy, while Admiral Schofield at 4,200. There's got to be a good nickname in there for him. His name's too good, though. That's the problem. How do you nickname a name as good as Admiral? At 4,200, he could be a starter and play 30-plus minutes. That gives him some tournament appeal. Marcus Morris, everything's trending down for Morris at the moment. He is averaging just 22 points over the last 3. The salary is down at 52, so that's interesting. So I think we at least look at him as a tournament guy, because if he goes back and plays 35 minutes and we go back to that situation where he was just taking every shot, then he smashes it. But it does seem to be moving away from that at this point. While the Fort, Kevin Knox, he's averaging 29 over the last 3, amazingly, and at $4,000, that's actually valuable. So I think that he is at least a tournament guy, and I wouldn't be surprised if he transitions into a cash guy soon. At power forward, Julius Randle is at 6,900.
Giggity.
The matchup's pretty strong for Randle. He hasn't really been a high upside guy, but I don't mind this one for him. Taj Gibson, no thanks. And then at center, Punch Bob's at 39. Always got tournament upside. Pasechniks is at 4,000. Mahinmi is at 42. Really hard to get excited about those guys. But Mitch Robinson at 62.
And Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
At that sort of a price for Mitchie, it is more of a tournament situation. His block rate has absolutely gone into the toilet. You'd think he's Evan Fournier. He's blocking so few shots. But there is still that tournament upside there for Robinson if things start to crack and go in his direction. Let us go on to the next game. The Utah Jazz, the Miami Heat. The Heat are favored by 4. The total is 212 points here. Justice Winslow is out again, but the Iron Shoulder, Goran Dragic, he is back, and he is at $5,100. Now, his last 3 games, before and after the groin injury, he's averaging 34 points, including 32 in his return against the Knicks. Now, the Knicks and the Jazz, slightly different teams, but at 5,100, I really don't hate this from Dragic. He's playing really, really well in his bench role. Kendrick Nunn's at 48, just a tournament guy with Dragic back. He only played 24 minutes last game, but his salary is dropped by $1,000 dues. So that does give him some appeal in that spot. Of course, Conley out for the Jazz as well. Jim Butler is at 8,400. He has been really differential, averaging under 40 points in his last 5. I'm okay with him, but I'm not massively into him. While the Spur Dunk Robinson's at 41. Yeah, look, even though he does come in and bang in those threes, he just does so little around other areas that it's hard to get excited in DFS. While the Don Mitchell,
He's good.
an absolute rock-solid floor. His lowest score in his last 5 has been 39, and at 8,000, what else could you ask for? Tyler Hero's at 44. I think I'll pass. Derek Jones at 45. The minutes are fine with Winslow out. He should be that 25-ish point guy. Don't mind him. I just think the upside's probably a little bit limited. While 6,100 for Bojan Bogdanovic. This matchup, small forwards have really struggled against Miami. Bojan is notoriously fickle in terms of which way the percentages go, so it is a little bit hard for me to trust him. While Jingle and Joe's at 5,000. Been putting up pretty strong numbers most nights without Conley in the lineup, but also a tough matchup for him in this one. Probably more of a tournament guy, but even his limited upside steers me a little bit clear. Royce O'Neal's at 42, no thanks. Bam Adebayo at 86. That is a lot to pay for Bam. He's been really, really good, but that is, I think it's bordering on probably a little bit too much here. And then for your centers, Olynyk at 3,500. Who knows, 30 points or 3 points? I don't think the upside's high enough to really take that risk, even though his minimum salary. While Gobert at 8,000, I feel good about him getting 40. That's enough value. That gives him a spot in your cash lineup and probably also with some tournament upside. The San Antonio Spurs and the Memphis Grizzlies. The Spurs are 1-point favorites in this one on the road. The total is 226.5 points. Jonas Valanciunas missed last game with foot soreness. If he is out again, for some God knows reason, they started Solomon Hill. I would just want them to put Brandon Clark in there, but for some reason, Taylor Jenkins is allergic to good basketball, so he's playing Solomon Hill. At point guard, DeJounte Murray's at 6,000. He's giving us 30 a night. That's fine. The upside is still really limited with how he's being used, but the matchup's a strong one for Muzz. So I do think at 6,000, he's worth looking at, while Morant at 72, probably on a little bit on the high side there for Ja. Derek White's at 4,000. Maximum Derek.
Maximum Derek.
More like thoroughly average Derek at the moment, so I'm not really going to get excited about him. While the wave pulled DeAnthony Melton minutes down as well. He did have 27 last game, but played just 15 minutes. And that sort of per minute production is probably asking a little bit too much from Melton. Pat Mills, Tyus Jones, no thanks. Shooting guards, DeRozan all the way down at 6,500. Not very often you see DeRozan down this far. That's because he's been struggling, averaging under 29 points over the last 3. I think he's a very, very reasonable GPP guy who could easily have 40-plus points. Bryn Forbes, Dylan Brooks, not massively into them, except Brooks, I think at 52, there is some 30, 35-point appeal, which gives him some tournament value. The drip, Lonnie Walker, is at minimum salary. I don't think we need to get excited about him. Kyle Anderson, Marco Bellinelli, Grayson Allen, no thank you. Small forwards, Rudy Gay, Jay Crowder. I don't really find interest in those guys. While Solly Hill at 3,700, again, started last game for JV and had 16 points. He had played better than that during the season. I just don't think he's someone to get excited about. Aldridge is at 7,200. I think that's great value for LaMarcus. Really, really strong play there. While Triple J is at 6,700. Has been managing to stay out of foul trouble, but that $600 price rise is not ideal, and that probably takes a degree of value out of that. While Brandon Clark's at 55. If we hear that he's starting, then I would love that. If not, it's tough with how they're using him these last couple of games, and the way they're using him is incorrectly. At center, Valanciunas is at 63. He's averaging 41 over his last 3, but that foot soreness is a concern. While Jakob Poeltl's at 4,200. The minutes that he gets limited to always puts a cramp on his overall upside. Cramp or clamp, I don't know which one I meant to say. The Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns, no spread out for this one at the moment. DeAndre Ayton is out again. Ravishing Rick Rubio is questionable with an illness, while Dario Saric and Frank Kaminsky are both probable. The Nuggets on a back-to-back after taking on the Lakers on Sunday at point guard. Rubio's at 71. I'd feel a little bit cautious about using him coming off the illness. Of course, if he is out, we had Alia Kobo start the last game and play really well. He's a shooting guard listed player who at 3,800 would be a great option if Rubio is out. Other point guards, the Blue Arrows at 73. They're a decent matchup for Murray. I think that's probably pushing it a little bit too far. Monty Morris, no thanks. At shooting guard, Booker's at 71. That's a bit. We talked about DeRozan's price drop. That is a big price drop for Booker, down at 7,100. That makes him really appealing. I like using Devin at that salary, while Gaz Harris...
Nice, Gary!
4,700, I'm just not super into it. At small forward, you've got Kelly Oubre at $6,000, who is absolutely crushing it at the moment. No reason for me to really go away from him here, while Farton Will Barton's at 62. I'll take Oubre over Barton at this point for similar salaries. McCall Bridges, Cam Johnson, no thanks. At power forward, Saric at 43. Now, he only had 19 points in 19 minutes last game, and that was a game without Ayton, so that's obviously concerning. I think he can play a little bit better than that and at least get to 25 points, which gives him value at his current salary. While Millsap's at 48, Jeremy Grant, no thank you. Frank the Tank at 4,000, not with Aaron Baines most likely to start in place of Ayton once again. At centre, Bainesy's at 43. He played 32 minutes, and it wasn't his best night, but he still did have 22 points. I think he can smash through that. And at 4,300, he looks to be a really, really strong option here in this one. Jokic at 9,500. Big Chungus. He's been rolling most of these recent games. I think at 9,500, he is absolutely a guy to look at. Mason Plumlee, hard to get the upside value in him with the minutes. Next game up, the New Orleans Pelicans, the Portland Trailblazers. The Blazers are 6.5-point favourites. The total is 228.5. Carmelo Anthony's missed the last 2 games with a knee contusion. He is also questionable in this one. Just always a reminder never to believe players. Melo exited that game on the weekend, and I'll be fine for tomorrow. Well, he missed that game, and now he's questionable for the next one, so they often talk shit about their injury status. At point guard, Damian Lillard, 9,300. Really solid price for Lil. Great matchup. He should be pushing close to 50. That's a strong one for me. Lonzo Ball still coming off the bench. At 4,700, that is appealing because he had 34 points last game. Still just 22 minutes, but we know he can rack up the minutes. We know he can rack up the numbers. More of a tournament one. Simons, no thanks. At shooting guard, CJ McCollum, 7,200, on a roll at the moment, 40-point average over the last 5. I feel like he can keep it going in this one. Well, JJ Redick, I'm not keen on. Drew Holiday at 82. I'll take CJ at 1,000 less than Drew for the shooting guard spot. Josh the Hitman Hart's at 47. I'm not massively into that either. Bazemore had his first good game, 37 points. He's at 4,800 as a small forward. I'm not getting overly influenced by that, while Melo's at 6,300. Hard to get interested in a bloke that's listed as questionable at a salary, which is about, not quite ceiling, but pretty close. While Ingram's at 8,700. It's a fair whack to spend on Ingram. The matchup's okay. He's been really, really good, but is he $8,700 worth? I reckon I might lean towards saying no. And then at center, Hassan Whiteside. The world. 51 over the last 5. Nothing seems to be slowing him down. I'm in. Let's go. Let's go with the Whiteside here. While Derek Favors has been putting up better minutes. I think that's the way we can phrase that. He's at 5,500, listed as a power forward. I should have talked about him in the power forwards, but had 29 points in 27 minutes last game. I think there's some okay value there for him. Jackson Hayes at 46, 32 points against the Blazers earlier this year. More of a tournament guy, but the matchup's super good for both him and Favors. It is a little bit hard to get excited about Hayes with Favors' minutes seemingly ramping almost all the way up. Next game up, the Houston Rockets and the Sacramento Kings. The Rockets are 5.5-point favorites. The total here is 228. Clint Capella's on the injury report as probable, while Bogdan Bogdanovic is questionable with his ankle issue. We saw a little bit of overlap between Bagley and Holmes last game, so hopefully that trend continues. Fox is at 6,700. He dropped 38 last game. No reason for him to be under 35 in this one, so a relatively strong option here. Russ Westbrook's at 9,600. He's been giving us 50s really, really consistently, so I think he's a worthy option as well. While Corey Joseph, his production's nowhere to be seen. Bogdanovic at 4,400, no interest in him at this point. McLemore similarly, while Bud Hield's at 64. Now, Hield's numbers have dropped considerably since Fox has been back. Some of it's Fox, but some of it's just the fact that Hield has not been able to hit a shot. That'll change, but will it change to the direction of mid-30s in points? That's where I have the concern with Hield. I'm not certain that he's worth it. Harden at 12,000 is always worth it, so he is in play for me as well. The pencil, Harrison Barnes. Barnesy. Good matchup for Barnesy. Good game last time, 37 points. I'm not super into using him here, though. Danny House, similarly. For your big man, Marv Bagley's at 6,000. That is getting up to the level that I think is maybe a bit high. But he had 31 points last game as a million birds just start fighting outside my house for some reason. $6,000 here for Bags is a big price jump, but I think he's still in play. Nemanja Bjelica is at 5,000. I find it hard to get excited about that. Well, Richaun Holmes at 54. Despite the minutes limits, despite the position sharing, he's still averaging 36 over his last 3. 5,400 is not a lot for Holmes. I think he's worth looking at here. PJ Tucker, not a good DFS play. And at center, Capella, 8,700 for Clint. I think that might be just verging on the high side a little bit, so I don't think I'd get excited about it. The last game of the day, the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Golden State Warriors. Karl Anthony Towns has missed the last couple. He's questionable with that knee sprain, while the triangle Eric Paschall is questionable with a knee issue. And the little dog Glenn Robinson is questionable with his ankle issue. Shabazz Napier has started the last 2 games for the Timberwolves. He's at 4,700. He dropped 35 last game. If he's starting again, then that is great value, and I would use him. Jeff Teague also shouldn't be shying away from him. He had 38 in 27 last time out against a pretty poor defense. For your shooting guards, Wigo is at 75. Love it. D'Angelo Russell at 83. Probably more of a tournament guy to me. Well, Damo Lee at 43. I imagine he will start again regardless of the status of Pascal. And he is good for mid to high 20s in points, which makes him at 4,300 a pretty good option. At small forward, Jarrett Culver, no thank you. Keita Bates-Diop, also no thanks. Okogie, very limited upside. Robinson, no thanks. Alec Burks is the one to watch, because if Robinson's out, I think Burks starts. I think he's good anyway at 5,600, but if Robinson's out, he should smash that, and he becomes a pretty strong cash option there. And then onto your power forwards. Draymond's at 67. Yeah, not massively keen. Covington is struggling. Not interested in him. Pascal, Chris, Spellman, no. At center, Towns at 10-3. Now, if Towns is ready to go, I'm all very, very happy. That's what I'm trying to say, to get in on him at 10,300. Cauley Stein is at 48, and he has been actually producing that value consistently over the last week or so. I don't mind him in this one. While Gorgie Jeng is the option if Towns is out. He's at 4,300, and he should get through that number if we do hear that Towns is out before the game. If we flick it over to DraftKings now, some value. A lot of those Wizards guys again, Ish Smith, Shabazz Napier, Aaron Baines, Troy Brown, Brad Beal, Brogdon, Payton, Whiteside, Lillard, Vucevic, Barrett, Sexo, Bagley, Jim Harden, all of those guys. De'Aaron Fox with some value over there as well. That'll do it for me today, guys. Don't forget, subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball, Instagram, Locked On Fantasy Basketball, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Jaren Jackson Jr.